It's draft time. That's right. The NFL draft is actually a couple of months away, but we are finally going to have our mock draft, a premiere for 2023, as we welcome in Dave Syvertsen from ourlads.com, senior draft scout. How's it going, Dave?
Greg, it's going great. I have a love-hate relationship with these things,
I know.
especially for this time of year. But I do think it is a necessary evil.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to doing it. I think this is actually the first time I've done something like this where I don't get to think about it for a long time and have full control. You know, you have a lot of control over what I'm going to end up doing.
That's
so
a good
it'll be
thing.
fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And again, we're going to be doing a handful of these. We're going to do at least one live. So keep that in mind. That's why you want to subscribe, because if you subscribe, we'll be able to inform you when we are going to have a live mock draft. And the great part about having a live mock draft is that you guys out there can interject. Let us know what you think live as we're doing it. So that's always important. And that's why we want to at least do one of them at some point. We're targeting the week of the draft, but if we can do one before that, that'd be even better. So just keep that in mind. So subscribe if you obviously enjoy the videos anyway, but that's another key reason. Okay, now we're going to do a mock draft. Of course, first round only, 31 teams with the Dolphins, no pick, and you're going to be picking first, so you get the odd picks. And let's get the show on the road. So Senior Bowl actually was, and the East West just occurred over the last few days. So at least we got to see the week of. Now you just got back from your trip, so did you get a whole lot of time to even watch Senior Bowl practices or watch the game at all?
I just started today, so I mean I haven't gotten through everything that I need to get through. I put a lot of focus on the offensive and defensive line one-on-ones. Found a couple different sources for the tape that was out there on these guys, and so that's what I've been putting most of my attention on. But I haven't gotten to the quarterbacks yet, the receivers, the linebackers. That's going to be next on the list probably later in the week.
And one thing I did notice, I'll tell you this is that I was going over the rosters, and it appeared to me, because I think you had only like one or two players out of like maybe the top 25 that are going to go in the NFL draft, it seems, that even showed up at the Senior Bowl, that there was I thought there was almost just as much talent at certain areas in the East-West over the Senior Bowl. I was surprised how much talent they had at the East-West.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really in the know with some of the gossip between the games. I mean, from my perspective, it seems like the Shrine game, the way they market themselves is that they're trying to be the premier game. Everyone knows right now that the Senior Bowl is the premier game. There's no questioning that. But it looks like the East-West is unofficially trying to maybe leapfrog them a little bit. I don't know if that will actually happen because the tradition that the Senior Bowl has and the recent bias that that is the game, and a lot of scouts think that the same way. But you know, there's enough to go around.
Of course, yeah.
At this time of year, I try to, with those games especially, I try to get away from this one's better than the other. I mean,
I just thought it was seeing like Zay Flowers and
right, Zay Flowers, yeah, A.T. Perry. I'll tell you what, it's fun to track this every year. I track this every year. How many of the players on the Senior Bowl rosters got drafted versus how many on the Shrine got drafted. And it's usually 3-1, 4-1 Senior Bowl to Shrine. So every 3 or 4 players that get drafted from the Senior Bowl, one gets drafted from the Shrine. So as long as that ratio stays the same, I'm still going to consider the Senior Bowl the premier game.
Yeah, we'll see how that works this year. We'll keep an eye on it. Okay, so you have the first pick. Now, again, part of this, it's early. Remember that, everybody, all our viewers. So we're going to change our minds 50,000 times between now and our final mock draft ourselves. We still have a lot of tape to go through. So I know there are fan bases out there. You guys have had the opportunity to watch every minute of every game throughout the season. Well, we're playing a little catch up there. We've watched a lot of film. We've watched a lot of games, and we've seen a lot of players. But to do you guys, usually it's one team. We got to do 32. And, so yes, in some respects, we are catching up to you. But of course, in other respects, this is our job. And we have definitely put in a lot of time and effort. So, so you go first. And once again, the hard part of this, Dave, is going to be no trades. And we know there's going to be a lot of trade action early because of the quarterback situation. But we're just going to do what we have to do with what we have.
Yep.
So go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, I mean, I'm going Jalen Carter, the D tackle from Georgia, over Will Anderson. It's basically a two-man race at this point if Chicago stays put. Either one of them will be a great pick. I think they could use either. If I had to rank which need is stronger on the Bears front, on the outside or inside, I'm going to go with the outside. And I do think that the inside is easier to fill in free agency. But Jalen Carter, as I get deeper into both of these guys' tapes, I think he is a better player than Will Anderson.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be by a good enough margin to say, hey, you have to pick him. If you're staying at this spot, you can't get a trade partner. And it's because I think Jalen Carter can do more for the defense. Will Anderson will make a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. He'll be a terror to block on the outside. But I think Carter's going to make a much bigger impact against the run. I think he's got a little bit more versatility. You can shift him between a couple different gaps. And to be honest, I think he has more upside.
Okay. Well, look, what was the last defensive tackle that was drafted in the top 3, that actually became like a star in the league?
Where did Quinn Williams went after that, right?
The Jets picked him at, I think it was 5.
Okay.
Or it might have been 3 or 4. It's possible.
Okay. I think, and that's who I've been comparing Carter to for months. Is I think he's going to be Quinn Williams.
Okay,
but that's a good draft trivia question. You'll have to get back to that.
That's a good one. All right, now I get the opportunity with the next 2 picks to pick quarterbacks. So that's what I'll do here. I'll make the simple pick, Bryce Young. The big question, of course, is going to be, and they're even talking now about, well, should the Bears trade Josh Fields? Should they trade Fields and pick up Bryce Young? Look, as much as I like Bryce Young, I like Fields. I like what I see, and I think if he has talent around him, I don't see any reason why you'd want to screw with that. So you tell me. I mean, I just don't think that makes a whole lot of sense to me.
I mean, at this point, the speculation is warranted. It's a new regime. They didn't draft Justin Fields, so I think it's worth a discussion. I'm sure they're talking about it too. You get to restart the clock on that rookie contract quarterback. And, so if you do have a significantly higher outlook grade on Young than you do Fields, it's worth looking into. But there's so many factors that go into it. You need to find a buyer for Justin Fields, and I'm sure there's someone out there that would take him. But you also have to weigh the fact that I like what Justin Fields did this past year, especially the jump in quality from what we saw from his rookie season to this season. I thought he started to find himself a little bit. And there's maybe 2 quarterbacks in the NFL that can do with their legs what Justin Fields can do. And it's hard to really evaluate him as a passer playing behind, you can make a case, the worst offensive line in football. Sure. And with a group of pass catchers that probably ranks bottom 5. Yes. Like, how is that a fair evaluation? Yeah. So I think Bears need to give him another shot and use this resource, the number 1 pick in the draft, on somewhere else to help that team out.
And I see exactly what you're saying, of course, because the new regime thing is very important. And look, they only know. I mean, they're with the kid every day. So if they were to even think about it seriously, then I would think it would be one of 2 things. Either it's just going to be rumor stuff that's not real, because if it is real in any way, shape, or form, then I think it's real enough that they actually will make the trade. There's no way they're gonna even think about putting it out there from their own camp, and then hold on to Fields and think that that's going to work really well in the locker room or with the kid. So all right, Arizona's next. So what are you going to do with the Cardinals?
Another easy call here. Will Anderson, he's still sitting there, 3rd overall pick. Yep. I think Arizona, if at least one quarterback goes in the top 2, which you think that has to happen, they're going to be left with the leftovers between Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, and that's a pretty good couplet to pick from when you're talking about leftovers. J.J. Watt retiring, they had nothing else on that defensive front. From a sack perspective, I think when we talked about them, it was you needed 3 players on that team or 4 players on that team to get to what J.J. Watt brought to sack-wise and production last year. Anderson is, like I said earlier, he's a terror off the edge. I think you feel very safe with him. He's definitely not a guy, when you consider the intangibles and the leadership, he's not going to be a guy that bottoms out. I hate saying that's a reason why you pick him, but it's always a fear when you're picking this high and you are paying some money to them, at least, that Will Anderson, at the very least, you're going to hit a double with him. I do think there are things he needs to clean up. The usage that Alabama had him, I thought he played inside a little too much this year, and I still don't know why. I've been trying to investigate. If you put him on the edge and just let him pin his ears back, he's going to have a Khalil Mack type impact on his game at the height of Mack's prime.
All right. So, look, this is also pretty easy. C.J. Stroud goes to the Colts. Now, I think that if something were to happen for the Colts, I think it's obvious. One of two things for the Colts is if they cannot find a way, or let's say they get outbid, or for some reason, they're still in that philosophy of veteran quarterback stuff. And let's say they even go into the draft knowing that they've already made a deal for Derek Carr or something like that, then I think Skoronski is just a perfect fit here if they don't go quarterback. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm on the same page with you there.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Look, these four players are not going to go to these teams in this order, but they could go in the top four in some way, shape, or form. All these four players. I mean, they very well might be the top four players in the draft and each draw a line with the rest, right?
Yeah. I mean, without knowing where the trades are going to be and who's going to – I would say that if there's four grades in this class overall that are just head and shoulders – or I would even say head and shoulders, just head above the next tier of athletes, the next tier of prospects, it's these four guys. And it would be – at this point, it would be odd to me to see anyone else in this draft get picked before any one of these four guys.
Yeah, it would be. But it happens. But
it happens, and I'm not going to make any guarantees because I know this is on YouTube, and whatever's on the internet will be there forever.
All right. Next up, we have Seattle. So now it's going to get a little interesting because of the fact that, again, we think the first four is pretty easy. So let's get the Seattle's got 2 picks. So this is the Denver trade pick, and then later on, I pick Seattle with pick number 20. So we both will have a chance to add Seattle players in the draft. Who are you going to go with? Who are you down to? Is this a decision, a tough one for you?
This is a tough one for me because there's a defensive back that I love here that fits their scheme in Brian Branch from Alabama. I think that he fits a need, especially if they lose the safety Neal to free agency, who I do think is going to get a big payday from someone in the league. And this is a very you're getting back to a top-notch secondary if Branch comes in. The other side of it is Will Levis, the quarterback, that there's a lot of split opinions on him around the league. But if I'm putting I'm going to bet my mortgage on something, he's going to go in the top 10, whether you like him or not.
Oh, yeah, I would agree.
The NFL likes him. So, what's the Geno Smith situation from Seattle? I think the team wants to stay away from putting such a huge resource into the quarterback position, but you're about to pay Geno Smith, all right, a sizable contract, nothing that's going to, hurt you too bad, or do you use a top 10 pick on the court position, which they've refused to do. And so I'm going to go with the defensive back, Brian Branch from Alabama, fits the personality of that defense really well. I think that's a side of the ball that they're always going to feed resources into. They love putting premier talent in the middle of that secondary and that complements what they already have on the outside between Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen.
So then, so basically, and this is important because we've talked about this going over the players, is that even though they have 2 high caliber safeties in Jamal Adams and Diggs, you believe Branch is going to be more than just a one position player, that he's going to be playing nickel. He's going to play in the box. He's going to play safety. That's his role. They're going to be 5 DBs on the field and he'll just be one of them.
Exactly. And, with the amount of dime package that we see, there's going to be enough snaps for him to go around. I don't think Jamal Adams is going to be in the long-term plans of this team. Coming back from injury, the play has been less than stellar. I know they gave a lot of resources for him, so I don't see them cutting him loose anytime soon. But I could see next year, as soon as next year, Brian Branch being a starting safety, and this year kind of being the hybrid nickel corner safety. And that's one of the draws to Branch's game. He can play all three spots. Like I said in our preview, if you grade him just as a corner, just as a slot, just as a safety, he's a top 10 caliber. So you mesh all those together and the amount of options he gives a defense, he instantly makes the defense better. Run, pass, inside, outside.
All right. Detroit is next. They have 2 picks. 6. Here's the Rams pick, of course, for the Stafford deal. I go with that pick. And then when they pick again with their own pick, which is actually going to be pick number 18, I get to pick the Lions again. So I was thinking really long and hard with this 6th pick about the tight end position. I'm only kidding. But I was I think maybe a little bit later we can talk tight end. But here it's so easy for me, and I don't think we're going to argue with this one. They have to go corner. They could take the best available corner. And since it's so early, I'm not going to go too crazy on which specific corner, so I'm just going to go with Witherspoon. At this point in time, he seems to be the consensus number 1. Whether or not I believe or you believe he's going to be that when it's all said and done, we've got a couple of months to figure that out. But I'll put Witherspoon there at number 1 and for corner. And this is going to be a position, unlike some of the other positions. This might be the most volatile position as far as who can go 1 and 5. It's like you can mix and match that. You can get like 10 different GMs and scouts, and they'll have 10 different opinions on 1 through 5.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think, and it's anyone's guess right now. I think that's going to have to just play itself out. Like I said, I'm still not up to speed yet on watching the defensive back tape. So I think any one of these guys that you throw in there, you're not going to get any disagreements from me. It's definitely the top need on that team. And I think they're a good corner away from being a high quality defense. I really think they're that close.
Next up, Las Vegas. So what do you like?
I mean, Carr, I'm considering him gone. And
I think we could all safely consider him
that, right? Yeah. And the question will be, do they pursue a Jimmy G type, a Band-Aid type quarterback? I don't think so. I think Josh McDaniels, he wants a quarterback that he can develop from the start. If you remember, the last young quarterback he got to develop as a head coach was Tim Tebow. And we all knew that was a losing battle before it started. Yep. So I think this is going to be where Will Levis goes. I'm going to give Levis to the Raiders. Okay.
And yeah, because right now it does, and we've talked about this for really the past a couple of weeks, last week when the news was official with Aaron Rodgers, but I mean with Tom Brady, that we kind of looked at the Rodgers situation now and say, all right, taking a look at it, Green Bay to either they're going to hold on to him or they're going to trade him, and I think over the past week or two, it just seems more and more likely that he's going to get traded. I kind of would be surprised if he stays in Green Bay at this point. The question is, where does he go? Does he go to the Raiders or does he go to the Jets? And I really do believe, because I have to try to take my own personal feelings out of it, but and I'm pretty damn good when it comes to not being biased. And
you are.
I'm sorry. I just think it's too good of a fit. I think the Jets right now would be 1, and the Raiders would be, maybe 1B. But I think the Jets would be the team that if he was just considering where to go, I mean, they're the closest because of their defense. They've got their own excellent receivers. All the Vegas has is Devontae Adams. That's his. Or maybe he wants to live in Las Vegas. I don't know. Maybe he does. But that's it. Do I want to live in Las Vegas and hang out with my good friend and we can throw the ball back and forth for 20 touchdown passes? Or do I want to go on a team that I feel like could probably be a Super Bowl contender as soon as I step on the field next year?
Yeah, I mean, if there is a betting market on where Aaron Rodgers gets traded to, let's assume he gets traded, I think I'll agree with your lack of bias here. I think he goes to the Jets. I mean, there's a betting market for everything right now. I mean, there might be a betting market on who our next pick is going to be in our mock draft.
Probably, yeah. There will be, but when that's available, who knows?
A lot of signs point to Rodgers to the Jets, and they all make sense. And the Raiders, I'm not sure it makes as much sense. And the question I have, though, is does Rodgers want to play in New York? Is he a New York kind of guy? Just with how his persona, how his ethos has changed in recent years.
True.
that's where I think he's different than Brett Favre, who ended up playing for the Jets. I personally would love to see it. I think he would do well in New York. I think the system around him, the players around him, I do believe it's good enough. The defense is dynamite. Back with Hackett again, who he has made a short list of coaches that he truly respects and likes to work with. That's a huge deal for an older quarterback with as much say and credibility as Rodgers. I think the coach who's around him matters more than who the wide receivers are. Because I know everyone's just naturally going to say Rodgers to Devontae Adams. Like, let's make that reunion possible. I think it has more to do with Hackett. And,
but again, that's right. You have to make sure that you have talent. And there's no question with Aaron Rodgers throwing the football and you have what they have even right now, that's more than enough. I mean,
no question.
Come on.
It would be the most talented group of players Rodgers played with, receiver, running back, that he's played with in a long time.
All right. So, but again, if the point is if Rodgers does not go to Vegas, and we're kind of thinking that that's what's not going to happen, then Vegas does need to do something about the quarterback position, and Levis would make a lot of sense there. All right. 8 is Atlanta, and there's a few different ways they can go. But to me, I think this is easy because of what we've talked about. They want to run the football. You get Bijan Robinson in there, you've got your stud running back. I have no problem putting Bijan Robinson in the spot.
Not bad. I think there's going to be some kickback from the Falcons fans on it, only because they love what Algier brought to the table. I mean, there's no question that Robinson is in a different stratosphere, talent-wise, upside. But with what Arthur Smith wants to do on offense, there is room for both these guys, right? Yes. I mean, he wants to run the ball 40 times a game, and I think it's probably one of the best support systems you can provide for Desmond Ridder. And Bijan Robinson, I think.
And by the way, I don't think Ridder is going to be starting. I think this is one of the teams that will bring in a veteran quarterback.
Okay.
Could be Tannehill, could be Carr. It could be a number of guys, but I think they're going to bring in a veteran. And, of course, it could be Lamar Jackson if that's their home run.
Yep. Before anyone freaks out about a running back this high, also know this is if he was graded as a wide receiver, slot receiver, he'd probably still be graded as a top 50 pick. If take the running back out of it, he's going to help the passing game. You drop back on 3rd and 6, and you have Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. I mean, you have a lot of options to work with. And so Bijan, let's just make sure we're not only categorizing him as a traditional running back. He's way more than that.
And that's the reason why I did it. If I thought the only reason I would take a running back in this spot is because I think Robinson can be that special running back that Atlanta would be looking at. Not, all right, let's bring him in and we're going to pair him with the rookie from last year. No, that's not why he's doing this. He's doing this because he can see a star player, which he had at that spot, and he knows the difference. And that's much more important to Arthur Smith than bringing in even a number 2 wide receiver. So he can get that a little later on or in free agency. All right, Carolina, you have the Carolina Panthers, and they are a team that is going to be thinking long and hard also about a veteran quarterback. Frank Reich now is their coach. I just spoke with, remember I had mentioned this, we had the interview set up with Rashad, and it got delayed. We finally got it on the channel. And Rashad did a great job of convincing me that if there was going to be a team that was going to do everything in their power to move up and to get someone like CJ Stroud, the Panthers were going to be one of those teams. And I think he's right. I agree with everything he said about that. I can see the Panthers being a very hard obstacle in the way of Indianapolis and some of these other teams to go out and get Stroud.
I 1,000% agree. I think that there's going to be a race to who trades up for a particular guy, right? If the league starts to fall in love with one of the quarterbacks and there needs to be a trade up, it's going to be between the Colts and the Panthers. And if the Panthers want to get up that far, they're really going to have to make a strong move. And I think they're ready to do it because they tried to make moves for some of these veterans that have got traded in recent memory, and they came up short. Their offers were not good enough. And if there's one thing about that owner that I feel like I know, it's that probably bothers him more than losing itself right now, is that he got outbid. he's a very aggressive personality. And I think now that he's been in this position for a few years, he's going to say, hey, if we feel strongly about one of these quarterbacks and we need to go trade up, we're going to go do it. So this might be their nightmare. They're sitting at 9 and the 3 quarterbacks are off the board. I can't give him Richardson this high. I thought about it. I just think it's a little too rich. I really am viewing him as a second-round quarterback right now. Maybe you sneak up into the end of round 1 to trade up for him so that you get that 5th-year option. But
you know their GMs that once those, especially if those 3 quarterbacks come off the board in the top 10, like it's very possible, what's going to happen. Richardson is going to go like 15 spots or 20 spots higher than he should.
Yeah, I mean, it's a swing for the fence. I'm not going to say it's a bad one, but you just have to know what you're getting yourself into with a kid that's barely started in college, and he's got a lot of highs and a lot of lows on tape. So I'm going to stay away from the quarterback position here. And I'm just
by the way, and just before you give the pick, the fact is because we all know that this is going to be such a bidding war, if they are real interested, it's going to happen soon. Because they need to know as soon as possible. Because if this scenario happens and they can't move up to get the quarterback they want, then they have to make a move in free agency. They've got to make a serious move for one of these, key veteran players, unless, all right, we'll bring in somebody for a year and we'll get one of the guys from next year.
That might have to be their backup plan if they don't fall in love with one of these guys and they lose out on the trade. Yeah. It might be like, hey, and this is what I'm going to do in the mock draft with this pick is let's continue to build our nucleus.
Okay.
And when we get our quarterback in, we'll be even more set. So I'm basically split between 2 guys here, and I'm going to go with another edge rusher to complement Brian Burns and Miles Murphy from Clemson. A really high upside freak athlete with a lot more size than what they have. And, Gross Matos, I love him coming out of college. He has not come to meet the standard or meet the potential I thought he would hit. I think he's a good player to have on your depth chart, but those snaps are very replaceable with a guy like Murphy. And, this defense is already good enough to beat a lot of teams. You get a real weapon like this on the outside and complement him with Brian Burns and what they have in Derek Brown. In that division, you could easily be a top 7 defense next year. And that's the kind of situation that if you're going to bring in a quarterback next year, next draft, you would love to be able to stand on that.
Okay, so I'm just going to guess that you were debating, if it was position, that you were debating between edge and corner.
Edge and corner, and I was thinking about the offensive line value there for a guy that's inside. I just think
Torrance?
It's a little too rich. Torrance and Ian Skoronski. He's my top offensive line.
Oh, you mean? I thought. So, what do you mean inside? Do you think Skoronski can play both?
I think Skoronski can play both. I think some teams will only view him as a guard.
Really?
I'm going to keep him at tackle in my stacks because I made that mistake with Rashawn Slater, and I'm not going to do it again with a kid from the same program. But it's that. That's who I was deciding between Miles Murphy and Skoronski, and I just think Murphy provides a little bit more top 10 superstar power potential than Skoronski.
Okay. Next up is Philly and the Eagles. You get the Eagles with the last pick. I get the Eagles here at pick number 10. And I tell you what, because of the fact that, look, we talked about a couple of teams that there's just going to be impossible for us to figure out with their draft situation. This is one of them because of all the free agents and all. It's just going to be really hard. But what I'm going to do is, because I do think there's a possibility that they're going to lose their guard, and it's so important to have the offensive line there at Philly that they'll take Torrance.
Okay. Probably the most impressive player at the Senior Bowl. Just all, and that's what I've been reading. A couple guys that I talked to that were down there. We had someone that was down there, and just watching some of the NFL Network. I love to listen to Jeremiah. He's probably one of the only guys on TV that I listen to these days. And I mean, he didn't lose a rep all weekend or all week it seems. So I love the pick, and I'll tell you what, he looks like an Eagles lineman, just physically imposing, dominant, constantly getting pushed off the ball, and that's part of the reason, probably the reason why this offense is dynamite.
By the way, before we move on, just quickly, give me a comparison between what you were saying with Slater last year and what you're thinking about with Skoronski this year.
Between the two players?
Yeah, like what was the position identity as far as inside, outside, and they're from the same school. So what happened last year that made you say, you know what, this year I'm not gonna forget what happened last year?
Well, Slater, in my scouting report, he was a top 7 player on my board. I thought he was one of the best players in the class. And I said if a team with a need at left tackle drafts him, put him at left tackle. But I think he could be a Zach Martin guard.
Okay.
That was in my report in my summary, that if he plays get inside, where I think he would have a higher ceiling and a higher floor, that he would be better inside. And he goes out and performs at an all-pro level as a rookie. When I think about Skoronski, again, you're trying not to get too swayed by the helmet. It happens to all of us. Certain players do well from a program, and it's hard to get that out of your memory, especially when it's recent. Skoronski is not the athlete that Slater is, but I do think he's a better technician. He's with the hands, the footwork, the bend, being able to stay square. He just checks all these boxes, and he doesn't lose on tape. But one thing Slater had that Skoronski didn't, Slater shut down Chase Young when Northwestern played against Ohio State. Skoronski never really had like that hallmark performance that you say, wow, that dude's a left tackle. So, again,
so he never went up against Mike Morris, I guess, too much.
Yeah,
that would have been the best guy.
Morris, yeah, I have to go back and look at who all his opponents were, but I know he didn't really have that standout performance against a top-notch player. A couple of the guys from Ohio State he toyed around with, but I think those guys are day 2 picks at the best. So. Skoronski, I feel safe with him, and I actually have my report done on him. It's already been sent in. It's going to have a similar vibe to it that, hey, based on where he gets drafted, that's where he'll play. He can play guard or tackle, but there is a length issue. He's 32 1/4 arms, and there are teams that will not even look at you as a tackle if you're below 33 inches. And whether you agree or disagree with that, it's a fact.
Okay.
So I think I would say.
Does it matter then where he gets drafted? Like if a team thinks he's a guard, do you think that he winds up sliding more as opposed to if you hear his name being called like in the top 15, you're probably hearing that some team that's looking for a tackle?
I do. I think if the consensus says this guy's a guard, I think it's going to make him slide. And let's say there's 2 or 3 teams that say, no, we view him as a tackle, or even more. I think that if a team views him as a guard only, they're going to be a lot less likely to draft him in the top 15 because of positional value. It's a real thing. Okay. Some teams think about that different than others, but just because that is the case, it's going to, if you had to make a prediction on his over-under where he's get drafted, if teams view him as a guard, it's going to lower his grade.
And who right now do you have graded as the top lineman?
Skoronski and Paris Johnson are kind of 1 and 1A with me.
Okay. And do you have Skoronski at tackle?
I have him at tackle.
Okay. All right. Tennessee, you have the Tennessee Titans pick. What are you thinking?
And with that said, I'm going to go with the first offensive lineman of the draft, and I'm going with, because of what this team wants at left tackle, because I think Lewan is as good as gone, Taylor Lewan. I think they're going to insert Paris Johnson week 1, day 1 as a starter on the blind side.
So you're going to go Paris Johnson over Skoronski?
Yes, I am.
So we're going to go back. So this is the first tackle. So we're going to go back-to-back linemen. Torrance to Philly and and Paris Johnson to Tennessee. So Skoronski, who is look, that could change even on this show, on this network, is a lot of people's number 1 offensive lineman. But right now we have him at least at number 3.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for Tennessee. Houston's next. And the easy pick was quarterback. I think this pick then becomes an edge rusher. So I'm taking a look at what they have at the edge that's available. There are still some good guys. I guess the top-rated guy that looks like he would make a lot of sense then would be Tyree Wilson.
Yep. Good value here for that pick. Good fit for that defense, too. With what DeMeco Ryans is going to bring to that team. Tyree Wilson he looks like a Niner. When I watch him play, I actually had that. When I first started scouting him early in the year, I didn't have him as a really high pick. I had him at a late first rounder, and I just kept on writing, this guy looks like a Niner. And it's funny that DeMeco Ryans is going to be calling shots here. It's ironic, but I think it's a great fit.
There you go. And the good thing is they run a 4-3, so they won't have to worry about any kind of scheme changes. All right, Jets, and I don't pick the Jets. You pick the Jets, so let's see what you do with my New York Jets at 13. Lucky 13. if they still have the
I
pick,
think
because this could be Green Bay's pick.
Yep, this could be Green Bay's pick. That's a good point. I'm going to go with Peter Skoronski here. I think the offensive line is the top need on this team. I know they have a couple of guys coming back from injury.
But I like the fact that you pick a guy that can play both tackle and guard, which I really think that would be the best fit for the Jets.
Yes, and I think it's the best fit for Skoronski because I'll tell you what, I don't know, and I don't know if anyone knows what his best spot will be in the NFL. And I think there's two spots on this line that they can toy with him. And he is smart enough. And mentally, I think he's acute enough to say, hey, we're going to try you out at both. And wherever we feel our offensive line, this like who knows? Maybe Mekhi Becton comes back and gets back to what we saw the flashes in his rookie year. Now you have a guard combo that, if Skoronski pans out, is probably one of the best in football. If you hit a roadblock.
But what do you do with Vera Tucker? Could also slide out to tackle.
He could.
But if Becton doesn't work out, then you can play Skoronski and Vera Tucker
right next to each other. Yeah.
But again, you also have Max Mitchell. But the whole idea is the Jets need more depth. They need more talent on the line, and they'll figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good problem to have, right? I mean, when's the last time you could say this about the Jets? Oh, we have too many good offensive linemen, right? I mean, every year by the time December hits, you're trying to hit the waiver wire and trying to find somebody. And if you want your offense to be top notch, if you want that offense to be even near what the defense is providing, you have to be better up front. And no better. I mean, this is a really good fit for Skoronski. I think it's good value. And, we have a little run on offensive linemen here, 3 of the last 4 picks.
Yes, and that's not a surprise. So let's now go to the New England Patriots next. And, wow, see, to me, right tackle would have been really good here for the Patriots. It could still be with Broderick Jones. They could still go that direction. But they have such a need at wide receiver. And the number 1 receiver is still on the board. And the only reason why I think that this might be an issue, because we talked about this as well, is the Patriots have had all sorts of terrible luck drafting wide receivers. But you just got to do it. I mean, lucky or unlucky, if you can get the number 1 wide receiver in the draft, whoever you believe is the number 1 receiver, then the Patriots have got to do it. So I'm going to stick with Johnson from TCU. Not going to go crazy, but who knows? I mean, do you think that there's going to be a debate with the top 3 guys and who's going to be one? Do you think it could go, like we said, with the quarterback position? Do you think, 10 different scouts could have it 3 different ways?
I do, because the receivers themselves, right, they're such different players, right? I mean, Johnson is your prototype outside vertical threat. Also, just a beast with the ball in his hands. He's going to make a lot happen after the catch. That's what a lot of teams want now. But Smith-Njigba is probably the most effective slot, best route runner. Comes from a program that's just breeding quality NFL receivers left and right. And then I think there's an argument to be made for Jordan Addison as the top receiver point. I think he's almost feels like the safest guy, right? I mean, there's a lot of unknown and a lot of risk with Johnson and Njigba.
And Addison also played at Pittsburgh, so he's familiar with cold weather.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big part of it as well. So, I mean, Johnson's my number 1 wide receiver, so you're not going to get an argument from me. I think that Patriots need to stop shopping at the dollar shop for the dollar store for their wide receivers. And if both he and Tyquan Thornton pan out, now you have something to work with from a downfield vertical passing game threat.
Now having Thornton in his little body ain't so much a big deal because he's blazing fast, and you've got your big guy out there to complement him. So, all right, Green Bay is next, and it's very possible the Packers are going to pick 13 and then 15. So, but right now we have him at 15. What do you got?
This is a tough call here. I think the best value on the board that we have left is at corner. I think Green Bay could use another corner.
Yes, I
don't know if I'm a believer in Eric Stokes, and Rasul Douglas is replaceable. So that's where I'm going to go. I mean, I just don't see a spot that makes sense that provides better value. So I'm going to go with Kelee Ringo, the cornerback from Georgia.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because I've been seeing Ringo, man. He's like we said, he could go 1 through 5 at that spot. And it's amazing because a few months ago, I think if you just, thought about at that time what would polled, who do you think number 1 corner of the draft would be? I think Ringo would have been the guy. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's just, why do you think it's changed so quickly? Is it because
I
people have had an opportunity to see him more in these last few games, and it's somehow questioned how good he is?
I think some are unfairly judging him against Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Okay.
receiver from Ohio State, even though I don't think he played a bad game when you're looking at every play from the All-22. I thought he stuck with them pretty well. But, I also don't want to use it against him that I think Marvin Harrison's the best receiver that's not in the NFL right now in the world, right? So, and a couple of the plays he gave up were more broken type plays. It wasn't reaction based. I think there's a ways to go with Ringo, but if this dude hits his ceiling, you're talking about a Jalen Ramsey type physical profile. When you're talking about the speed, the quickness, the size. The kid is 6'2", 210. That is a rare blend of talent, and he moves exceptionally well. I just think that he's a little raw around the edges, and so for that reason, you might see him get bumped down a little bit, but he's still my number one corner, and he's been there for a while.
All right, if Green Bay gets this 13 pick and they got 15, is it possible that they could use one of those two picks on the first tight end?
Yeah, I was thinking tight end. I thought this was a little high for him, but
if you have two picks, it makes it a little easier for you to use one of those picks on a tight end.
Absolutely, and there's a couple tight ends that they go out and blow out their workouts and just crush it and just show these guys that they are explosive threats. They're not just average athletes with good stats, and good production. It is possible because they did use the resources at wide receiver again last year. So I don't think – I almost was considering offensive line for them as well.
Yeah,
defensive line.
Skoronski, if he was available, they'd love that.
Yeah, that would make sense too. They love the versatile guys too. So, but I think Green Bay can go in a lot of different directions here, and you have to start rethinking how they're going to be building a team around Jordan Love if they trade Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to be a tough call for them.
Okay, next up. Oh, and by the way, you said you pay attention to Jeremiah.
Yep.
I saw his. I was telling you, I saw it on the scroll. His rankings. He had Kincaid in his top 10.
Yeah,
so
I know.
There you go.
I want to be on record. I would like to be on record that I was. I had said that Kincaid is definitely capable of being a first rounder months ago.
Absolutely. Yes.
He fits like a T to what the NFL's looking for. He's not an inline guy. He's not a wide tight end. So I think some teams might not look in that direction. But for a guy that you're going to motion and line up in the slot like what KC does with Kelsey, he's definitely worthy of being picked this high.
Absolutely.
He is.
All right. Washington's next. And now, look, the question, is this a team that is going to be looking at quarterback? Because this is actually a spot that I can definitely see picking Richardson higher than he's supposed to go, because you don't have to play him right away. You got the other young kid there, and you're probably going to find a way to resign, what's his name? Heineke. So I could see that being the case. Otherwise, it's cornerback. And again, if you take a look at it, the cornerback spot is there's still going to be a couple of guys worthy of being maybe the top corner in the draft. The question also is going to be about Rivera and what kind of timeline does he believe he has? Because Richardson is not he may need 2 years in order to develop. So it's because of that I'm going to take cornerback. But I could, again, if Richardson's going somewhere early, I can see it happening there. So I'm going to put Gonzalez here.
Okay, I like that. I agree with you. The Rivera situation is really what dictates what Washington will do in the draft. All right.
Oh, wait. You know what? I tell you what. Because I'm going to be funny, I'm gonna put Porter there because he covered his former teammate. So they're going to go Penn State receiver and then corner.
I love it.
All right, so go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Not at all. The Rivera situation, it's weird. It's hard to know. New ownership coming in, I think that's going to be a part of the factor. I don't think Washington has gotten any better since Rivera's been there, and NFL not for long, right? It's I think he's coming in on year 4, and a team that's not getting better and is in a division that I think is going to be much stronger next year than it was this year. I think they're going to have to go for. Yeah, they have to swing here for a guy that's going to help this team win next year. And I think they have to lean into their strength. And the strength of this team will likely be the pass rush. And hopefully Chase Young just forgets about 2022 and gets back to what we thought he would be and Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen. They'll probably lose Deron Payne to free agency, but just beef up that pass defense and make it a team that's really tough to score against, and try to piece together some offense just to try and win some games. Because I think if they have another 7, 8, 9 win season without a quarterback in next year's quarterback draft coming up, that's going to be much stronger. Yeah. I think they're just going to want to press the reset button. So I agree with you. Washington either has to trade for a quarterback this year, be one of the teams that's in the market, or they have to try to lean into their current strength and be a team that tries to win games defensively.
Yeah, I think, though, when you have so much uneasiness at upper management, I just can't imagine that he's going to be given the keys to just make some blockbuster trade and trade away the future to get I don't think that they would allow that and feel comfortable with that. So yeah, what really this definitely looks like the making of, in 2024, they're going to start all over again. They're going to draft a quarterback high because they're going to have a bad year. They're going to bring in a new coach, a new GM. It has the makings of something like that possibly happening. All right, you're next with Pittsburgh.
So I think with Steelers, their traditional organization, they follow a template, not exactly to a T, but I think that their mission this year is going to be to protect Kenny Pickett. And they're probably, biting their nails watching all these offensive linemen go right as they're approaching their slot in the draft. But I think they go with, by far, the best available offensive lineman, one that could probably slot in year one and start at left tackle, and that's Broderick Jones, the athlete from Georgia.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. As we talked about it on their report, the offensive tackle spot, their biggest need on offense. They could use a shutdown corner. We definitely believe that. And they could also get they also have to think about an inside linebacker and really some extra talent up front. So they have some needs on defense, no question. But offense, it's definitely tackle, right?
Yeah, it's definitely tackle on offense. And the one name I was considering here was Trenton Simpson, the linebacker. They kind of the overhang linebacker. I don't know if he fits that scheme very well. It's similar, not exact player to Devin Bush. I think Simpson is a little bit better in coverage and can offer you a little bit more from a versatility perspective. But I don't know if Pittsburgh is going to dip back into that pool of trade up for Devin Bush, sign Miles Jack in free agency, and then draft Trenton Simpson, and all within a few years at a position that's just not considered premium. So I think they have to fix the line first, support Kenny Pickett, and then go from there.
All right. Next up is Detroit, and we already have Detroit with a cornerback in Witherspoon. So this now becomes interesting, my Detroit Lions friends, because I'm sorry, but the fact remains. See, I think what a lot of the Lions fans are saying is they're looking at the fact that the position itself had the proper amount of touchdowns. They had the proper amount of 3 guys or 4 guys producing like better or just as much as one guy would. That's right. The thought process that I'm gathering from the Lions fans are. And I see what they're saying, only if, and we said this on the show, only if Ben Johnson doesn't see the need. That's not where he values his offense. He doesn't care about having big production of a number 1 tight end that could stretch the field. That's not how I run my offense. I don't need that. If that's the case, then I think, look, they're right. And if I was picking here, I would look for an edge rusher or maybe even another guard like the kid from Mock, the kid from the FCS school. But yep. I'm sorry. I just think, based on what I know, talent-wise, and that's what I'm going to go on, they don't have a number 1 tight end. They just don't. And they have the opportunity to get the number 1 tight end. And so because of that, I'm going to think about either taking the number 1 guy, which is either going to be Kincaid or, that's the other thing. We talked about the tight end position. As much as we both love Kincaid, the fact is this is another position which, you know what? I think 4 guys could be interchangeable with the amount of GMs and scouts. I think there are guys out there that all of a sudden really believe, and I don't think they're wrong, but I think there's guys out there that believe Musgrave could be the number 1 tight end in the draft.
Absolutely. No, Musgrave is still in the discussion. I mean, I don't have him up there right now because I want to see how he did at the Senior Bowl, so I haven't gotten to his tape. But all reports and the people that I talked to down there said he was 100% back to normal. Just you could clearly say he hasn't played in a while, so he was a little rusty. But the physical package that kid brings to the table is as good, probably even better than both Kincaid and Meyer, just from a receiving size, speed perspective. So he's very much in the discussion for the number one overall tight end.
All right. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to pick a tight end here, and the only reason I'm not going to pick a tight end here is just because of the fact that I do believe it's a deep class of tight ends. I think they can, but again, there are enough fans out there that watch the team play, and they may have this knowing feeling, or just they know that this specific coordinator just doesn't really need to go down that direction, which is why they got rid of Hawkinson in the first place. And remember, we did talk about that. That was a very weird trade because it was in the division, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to say that instead, what this team can use, if I'm taking a look at what's left, they don't have Anzalone, so they can use a middle linebacker, but I don't think that's what's going to happen here. I think it's up front. So the question is going to be which player, because I could see one of these players up front. Maybe it's Breezy, maybe it's Benton, because he had a hell of a week this past week at the Senior Bowl. It could be one of these other edge rushers, because it can't just be Hutchinson as the lone edge rusher, really, full time. So there's a lot of guys to choose from. I tell you what, give me some guys that you would be considering.
I think if you're going to take an interior pass rusher right here, I think it's got to be Breesy over Benton, because Benton is more of a every down run plug. Yes, he can bull rush a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be a big time pass rusher. Breesy comes with risk and a lot of unknown and a lot of rawness, but a guy that stands this tall, weighs this much, and runs as fast as he can, and has shown the ability since his true freshman season to be a penetrator, to get behind the line of scrimmage and cause disruption. You pair that with Aiden Hutchinson and the package pass rusher they have in James Houston. That's, if I was going to go D-line here, that's where I would go.
Yeah, because they have McNeil anyway, and that McNeil would be playing Benton's position, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to, and I just, the problem, I would want to pick an edge rusher, to be honest with you. I just don't think, I think Brzee is a more talented player than the guys that are left on the board on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that. No, I like the pick. I like the fit. I like the intangibles that Breesy brings to the table, and I think the Lions value that a lot.
Does he fit the MO of the coach?
He 100% fits the MO of the coach, and I think they're going to love his story. This is a match where I'm not thinking Breesy's going to be a really high pick. This is probably as high as I could see him going, but this is probably one of the true locations that I think just the marriage lines up really well.
All right, but again, it's very possible, because we're going to do 4 more of these, that one of us is going to end up taking a tight end here. So
yeah.
It's very possible,
Yep.
but we'll see. Okay, Tampa Bay's next.
So, Brady's gone. They have a championship caliber roster, in my opinion, especially if the offensive linemen come back healthy. They have 2 great wide receivers. They have a championship caliber defense on multiple fronts. I don't think this is going to be a situation where you see them blow it up. If I'm going to make a prediction on where Jimmy G goes, I think this is going to be it. I think Jimmy G's just going to follow Brady around the league a little bit and end up the quarterback. So, but no matter whether it's him or somebody else, I think Tampa Bay is going to go and try to buy their quarterback. It could be Derek Carr. I think they're going to still try to, especially with how down the NFC South is right now. I think that they're going to be able to go into this offseason, into this draft, into this pick, and say, hey, who can help us out this upcoming year? So this is a tough
This
call.
is another one, by the way, that we could see Richardson go. I mean, if they, because it all depends, especially if they bring in a Jimmy G.
Yeah,
I could definitely see them, using this pick on a future quarterback.
Yeah. So, I'm split between a couple of different spots here. I think they could go wide receiver here and just get that 3-man show between Godwin, Evans.
How about a number 1 tight end?
A number 1. I like what they brought in last year, though, in Kate Otten. I think he's going to be.
Who do you like? Who do you think? Which one?
K. Dotton last year, who
You
they
think he's going to
drafted.
be a pure number one?
I do.
Okay.
I think they're going to view him as number one. So, tough call. This is the first
The
time I'm kind
defensive
of like.
line, by the way, needs. They need somebody to.
Offensive line needs help.
Yes, offensive line. Yes.
I think if they went somewhere, they'd be reaching right here. They could use some help up front. No, but I think they're going to lose Levante David in free agency, and I think that
probably.
defense works best when they have multiple fast, aggressive linebackers. So this is where I think I'm going to put Trenton Simpson, linebacker from Clemson.
All right, Simpson's off the board. Next up, Seattle once again. So Branch went with the 5th pick. You had Seattle with that 5th pick, and that leaves, just taking a look with Seattle. So I think we've talked about this. I think they could use a slot wide receiver, depending on what they believe in Eskridge, and they could believe in Eskridge, and then they still just re-sign the veteran, and maybe they're okay there. I don't think there's any question. We all know they need a center. And they have done this in the past many times, where Seattle has drafted players in the first round that we thought were, mid-second round, late second round, early third round players. So if there's a reach in this area for the top center, I think this would definitely be it. They could also use another defensive interior player and a cornerback. So we've talked about this. So there's some options. I'm not going to put center because, again, I'm just going to be guessing that he'll reach for him, and the center position is a little too rich here at number 20. So I'm going to go either at defensive tackle or at corner. And I would probably think the top player on the board would probably be Gonzalez. What do you think?
I like that. I think Gonzalez is he's my top defensive player that we haven't drafted yet. That'd be tough. I mean, are they going to put another resource into a secondary? I mean, this franchise has done it plenty of times. If they feel that
that's Pete Carroll's baby.
Yep. I mean, I was even think a receiver here. It's on
that's what we talked about. Yeah, I mean, but if they wanted it, what's their cap situation? Their cap situation is good.
Good enough. Yeah,
it's good enough. So again, they could bring back Goodwin on the cheap and give Eskridge another year. We just don't know what they think. But I can easily see them, picking one of those 2 receivers and putting him there too. But I mean, when you have so many needs at other positions, do you really need to have 3-star type receivers? I mean, are we getting a little carried away?
You could make that.
You could do it. I don't have a problem with it, but I'd rather see him do it if they were like a Super Bowl team looking to just add on, like, hey, what's this? The wealthier get wealthier.
In some situations, I also always try to keep myself accountable to this, that, yes, the draft is very much about the 2023 season, but it's also about 2024 and 2025. And,
I don't see cap issues for them with the 2 receivers, though.
How much longer will Lockett still be?
Honestly, looking at their cap situation, I think they both have long-term deals with dead cap space that they're not going anywhere for 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you could have Seattle. They are a team that will lean into the strength. They double drafted tackles last year, and they both started pretty much every game for them. I think they started all 17 games in the playoffs. So you could see them double dip again.
You know what? That's a big hole, though. I mean, you've got Woolen, and Bryant was a nice added pick as well, but you got a big hole opposite those 2 guys.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think it kind of leans into their strength and gets them back to what made them a really successful program for a long time.
All right. So again, there are some options there that we talked about: slot receiver, center if they want to move up early, and also the interior of the defensive line too could definitely be an option there. And knowing Pete Carroll too, maybe he'd go after that USC kid you love so much and put him in there at defensive tackle.
He'd be a menace there.
Yeah. So tons of options. I'll put Gonzalez on the board because, like I said, I think he might be the top overall, like you just said and admitted. I think he might be the top prospect left on the board.
Yeah. Yep. I like it.
You got the Chargers.
So, the Chargers have several issues on defense yet again, right? They have a new offensive mind in calling the shots. They have a quarterback that has probably the best pure arm in football, but he doesn't get to throw the ball downfield because they don't have a really credible deep threat that can separate vertically. So I really would love to give them a downfield threat, but I
Yes.
don't know. I don't know if Jordan Addison is that guy. I think he kind of adds to what they have, but with
So
Keenan
you think
Allen,
that they're better off waiting and using it on a second-round receiver?
yeah, like a Jalen Hyatt, who will probably be a second rounder. I mean, you might have to trade up to get him if you're really kind of zeroing in on him alone.
Okay.
So I think they wait. Jackson Smith. I mean, here's the thing, though, right? Keenan Allen has been such a vital part to that offense for a long time, and he just can't stay healthy now.
No. We
He's
talked
got a
about
cap.
the possibility of them cleaning house with some of these old contracts. Mack,
Yeah.
Allen. It'll be interesting to see if they finally do it.
Right, and it's so Smith Njigba made a lot of sense to me because I feel like he's almost a carbon copy of what Keenan Allen was. Like that's who I'm going to be comparing him to when I do the NFL comparisons. So I'm split between.
But right now we don't know if he's going to be on the team yet, Allen. So
right, so I'm going to stay away from that. And I'm going to go with where I think they need the most help to help them win next year, and it's going to be Lucas Van Ness, the defensive end / hybrid D tackle from Iowa. Not the exact fit that I want for what that team needs. I think they need a D tackle that can stay there. But with the amount of injuries that you get from Mack and Bosa, and the fact that Van Ness did play, I think he played over 150 snaps in the BGAT this year as a 3 technique. And he's a safe, every down defender that, with the issues on that defense, they get pushed around inside. The linebackers don't fill the run, right? But they just have guys that are not dependable. And I think if there's one trait to his game that I like the most, other than the J.J. Watt type frame, he's a little lighter, it's the fact that he's just a safe, dependable player with a really high upside athletically as a pass rusher.
And Benton, would this be too rich for Benton?
I do. I still have Benton as a day 2 guy. I think this is a little bit of a reach for him.
Baltimore is next, and Baltimore is a team that can go in a variety of ways, but they do have one obvious glaring hole, and there are 2 excellent receivers sitting in front of us. So I'm going to go ahead and take the best one, and that's Addison. In my mind, it's Addison. Okay. But yeah, Smith and Jigba could definitely be the guy. But I'll take Addison. I think the other thing we have to consider with Smith and Jigba is he did miss the season. So he is coming off of an injury, and we haven't seen him play. Yep. So I think if there are teams that are going to be deciding on a flip of the coin, I just think you just go with the guy that you didn't have any health issues. So I'll take Addison.
I like that. I think that's a good fit too. Not exactly what that offense is going to look like next year, but I think no matter what, Addison fits into any passing game, inside and outside.
All right, you got Minnesota.
I think they're going to put another resource into the cornerback position. I mean, they've been doing it a lot lately. Yeah. Even if they bring back their top corner by far in Patrick Peterson, he won't be around much longer, and he is going to be expensive. So I think
I don't know how you can. You know what? I know he's old.
Yeah.
If somebody offers him a lot of money, they can't afford him. I mean, they just have bad cap space.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's going to be a tough spot for them to justify not doing it, but. They're going to go Cam Smith, cornerback from South Carolina. I think he's probably one of the most attitude-based corners, plays with a lot of confidence. He can play multiple coverage schemes, great with the ball in the air. And he got some, not as much, but some Sauce Gardner treatment this past year. Like nobody wanted to throw it in his direction. So you really have to kind of do a deep dive on his tape, which I already did. And I think when it comes to movement traits and making plays on the ball and anticipation, he's up there with the other guys. I just don't think he plays as big. That's why we're going to have him down a little further. But I think it's a good fit for the team and a good value for the player.
And by the way, that was I was looking around again at a few of the other draft boards, and you seem to be higher on Cam Smith than some of the other ones, some of the other scouts.
Yeah, I think Cam's been in my top 6 cornerback group since the start, and he did nothing in 2022 that made me go away from that thought.
All right, Jacksonville is next, and we are finally – now, look, this is all going to depend on free agency. They don't have good cap space, and if Ingram wants to resign there and he's going to settle a little bit, and we talked about this, stay where you should, and this will make you a much better player, but we don't know. Maybe another team says we'll pay him more, and he'll leave. So this is the tough one because – we don't know. We don't know what they're going to do with Ingram. So, first, before I make this pick, guess what do you think is going to happen with Ingram? Again, they have bad cap space.
Bad cap space. They're going to have to pay Lawrence somewhat soon, not soon. And I think they want to get players around him that are going to be that they know they're going to be around him for a long time. I think that's part of developing quarterbacks is you draft players after the quarterback is there so that you can guarantee they'll be there year after year. Where Evan Engram, if you're going to try to sign him to another 1-year deal, it's kind of just adds a long-term question mark. And I'll tell you what, this team likes to run the ball. And as good as Evan Engram was catching the ball this year from Lawrence, he still is terrible in line. He's a liability as a run blocker, and I think they want something at least a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical inside. So I think they go tight end, and I think they let Evan Engram walk in free agency.
All right, then basically it comes down to if you believe though that they're going to look for a bigger tight end, and we're not going to put Kincaid here, obviously. So it comes down really to Meyer, Washington, and Musgrave. Meyer's still, I think, the number one guy for now, but it could go in any direction. I'm going to go ahead and just stick with Meyer for now, but it can go any of those guys.
That's the safe pick, I think. It's funny as the draft process gets deeper and deeper, you start, almost forgetting
overanalyzing.
About the guy. Yeah, overanalyzing, forgetting about the guys.
Finding warts on players that you really shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and no player's perfect. So if you watch long enough, you're going to find things that you don't like. And there's still some things I don't like about Meyer, but I also feel better about him if you're talking about a floor, and I think he's the kind of guy in an offense like that with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, and don't forget about Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. I mean, I just think he complements the offense better than the other tight ends.
The other position definitely, though, would be right tackle. So a lot's going to depend. Same thing with tight end. Are they going to resign? I don't think they're going to resign Taylor, so I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll see. But yeah, right tackle would if they get lucky and one of those guys are still available that we've already taken off the board. By the way, Mock, is he going to be a tackle or guard? Do you think?
Guard and center.
Guard and center.
A long guard/center. He played both at the Senior Bowl. I think no matter who drafts him, it's going to say, hey, you're an interior guy, and we'll figure it out once you get here.
Okay.
Had a long debate with that with one of our scouts from our lads. I've had him at guard since the fall, just based on measurements and some of his play style. And then at Senior Bowl, he was strictly inside. And that tells me that coaches and scouts, they're not even viewing him as a potential tackle at the next level.
Let's now move on to the New York Giants, and you have the pick here. So what are you doing? Again, this all depends. We're just going to guess that Jones and Barkley return. I think that's what's going to happen.
I agree with you. I think that the question will just be how big of a contract, how greedy is the Daniel Jones camp going to get? I wrote up a long piece on what I think his market really is, with considering the fact that the cap goes up approximately $10 million a year. So I think, you might see the contract's going to seem rich right now when they re-sign him, which I think they'll do. But it won't be as drastic 3-4 years from now. So I think he'll be back. And I think at the very least, Barkley will be franchised. No matter what, this offense needs to add more firepower.
Absolutely. On the outside. Yes.
And I think you're going to double dip here. I think there's going to be multiple picks with their first 3 or 4 that are added to improve the passing game. I would love for one of them to be a vertical threat. I think this is a little too rich for Jalen Hyatt, the top deep threat from Tennessee. There's a lot of questions about him, his game as well. I did think about Dalton Kincaid because even though they drafted a 4th-round tight end from San Diego State who far exceeded the dividends you normally get from a 4th-rounder, I think this is an offense, one of the few, it would work to have 2 tight ends on the field and Kincaid be your slot, your big slot, and you let Wan'Dale Robinson kind of be the gadget player who I think would work best in that role rather than just a strict slot. So, I think no matter what you add to this passing game, it's going to be a good pick.
Well, I mean, if Smith and Jigba is available, I mean, they can't pass on the guy, can they?
That's where I'm going to go, but I don't think it's a definite shoo-in, only because, if they want to add a bigger playmaker type threat, they want someone. I think he's going to run in the 4.5s, low 4.5s probably, which is good enough for me. But he's not going to be the vertical threat that Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave have shown. But they need a slot.
Well, like you said, they can double dip. They can go ahead and use their next pick on a speed guy, deep threat.
Right. Right. And so that's where I think they're going to go. If Smith Njigba in this situation, if he's still there, that's where they're going to go.
All right. The Dallas Cowboys, another team that is hard to tell what they're going to do because they have so many decisions to make at free agency. So, this is tough. So I'm going to really be looking for best available player, to tell you the truth. And right now, a tight end is definitely a possibility because I don't think that they're going to re-sign Schultz. But again, we're just making guesses here. They could also use an upgrade at center, I think, is long overdue. But, that would be a guess on whether or not they're content with who they have right now. Who hasn't really done much. I think the obvious need before we get into any free agency stuff is then the interior of the defensive line. And so maybe the kid from USC wouldn't be a bad idea. You got Benton, you got Cansey. So I think these are some of the options that I'm looking at. I'm going to go, I tell you what, knowing Jerry Jones, though, I'm going to go ahead and put Kincaid in here.
I like it.
He likes that group. They like to make like the smart pick. We're going to outsmart everybody, and we're going to take this kid that's going to be the next superstar tight end. So I'll go with Kincaid.
And if anyone's going to disagree with the pick, it would be because Dallas took Jake Ferguson last year in the draft, who I don't think is someone you make draft decisions based on, right? Sure. I think he's a nice guy. I've always projected Ferguson to be a backup. And
so are you thinking more of an inline tight end type or a blocking type, a bigger tight end?
Who, instead of Kincaid?
Yeah. Is that what you were going to? No. Or you think Ferguson actually, right now, they could be looking at, like, you don't think it's the right idea, but some people might think that Ferguson could end up just slotting in for Schultz as the number one.
Yeah, some people will think that. And he did play well this year. But I think, again, even if that is the case, even if you do believe in Ferguson, Kincaid can play that different role. And the team, that passing offense, it needs a better presence in the passing game. I don't care where you get it. It could be your F tight end, where you play 2 tight end packages, which in an offense like that, where I think they're going to have to dial the offense back a little bit from just letting Dak air it out over and over, go back to a power running game, maybe even draft another running back later on to complement Tony Pollard and
just
Zeke.
More offensive line, get younger in the middle.
Right, but I like the 12 personnel looks where you have 2 tight ends on the field, especially one Kincaid who can play a slot, and it kind of keeps the opposition guessing. Right, if you can run out of those looks, you can pass out of those looks. And you could just go based on matchups. I think Kincaid, you're going to get kickback from some Cowboy fans, but I think it'd be an excellent pick for them.
All right. Buffalo is next. We have, 5 teams to go. The Buffalo Bills. And what do you think the Buffalo Bills are going to do? Because they do have some needs, especially on the offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, offensive line, the center is looking at me, who had dominant Senior Bowl. Again, I told you I got through the offensive line tape, most of it from the week, and he exceeded my expectations.
Really?
And
so you think now he's moved in definitely to the end of the first round?
That's where I think he could start going. If I had to coin flip right now, I still think just because of the position, it's not highly valued, but there's so many teams in the league that need a center, and I think Buffalo's one of them. I'm not a huge Mitch Morse guy, and I think that
we've talked about that. It's like, come on, even though they might have bigger needs at the other positions just based on talent. It's like, dude, this guy's been here for a few years. He's just a body, man. He doesn't improve your line, and he's a center. It's an important part of your offensive line.
Yep. But I'm going to throw a little curveball at this pick, and I think that it's going to be viewed as something they don't need right away. But I think the system in which the Bills play on defense would use this player and maximize what he can produce.
Another edge rusher?
Yep. Nolan Smith from Georgia. The slightly undersized, but as explosive as the guys you're going to find. It can help kind of ease Von Miller back into the system, maybe rest him a little bit as the year goes on, because you want him on your team at the end of the year. That's why you have Von Miller. You don't have him just for the regular season. You need him in the postseason. And I think Nolan Smith gets him off the field and allows him to stay fresher. And I think it's a great player to learn from. I mean, Nolan Smith is as explosive as Von Miller. And the injury that he had in college was pec-related. It's not lower body. I think he's going to come in and be an explosive threat. And then once Von Miller is gone, it's an ideal complement to what they have in Rousseau.
All right, so there you go. Smith. Look, and I that's not a surprise to me either. That's why I guessed it, because it makes a lot of sense based on what they've done at that spot for the last few years. And we saw what happened after he got hurt. Von Miller, the pass rush just disappeared. So,
yep.
All right, Bengals are next, and another team that we all know they need an offensive line. They can go in multiple directions. On defense, they can use another corner. There's going to be a lot of free agency decisions they're going to have to make at safety. But because of the needs they have and the players that are left on the board, I'm going to go with the guy that you just mentioned, and I'm taking the top center on the board. So I'm taking Schmitz from Minnesota. It's about time they get serious at center, because we know that they could prefer a tackle, but I think Schmitz might be the best lineman. I think you could go after one of the other tackles, but based on, like you said, how well Schmitz played, I just think he might be the best lineman left on the board right now.
Yep.
And by the way, other spots that we were thinking about or we could have considered, this is another, do they re-sign Hurst or do they go after a tight end? That's quite possible. Imagine you put a tight end, a good tight end. Look, I think Hurst did a pretty good job, and I think they can re-sign him cheap. And they got the money to re-sign him. But imagine if they grab one of these tight ends to have Joe Burrow throwing to him for the next 5 or 6 years. That could be exciting. And they could, just like, and we said, again, they can use the top defensive back is a need. And like the Bills, they could use some more edge depth on the defensive line. What were you thinking?
I mean, I think Cincinnati, the discussion has to start with the offensive line. I do think that they're going to kind of look elsewhere for left tackle. Jonah Williams, they gave him plenty of opportunities. He just never got better. I think if there is an opportunity to bring a left tackle in over the center, I do think that's where they're going to go. But it's a risky proposition to throw a rookie protecting Joe Burrow's blind side. So I like the pick. I think it's going to be offensive line. You won't get any dispute from me as long as that's where they go early on. What's the future of T. Higgins? That's going to be a popular talking point this offseason. He's definitely a trade candidate just for the fact that you're going to be selling him at his highest value. A team will give a first-round pick for him, and you know you're probably not going to be able to re-sign him long-term because you still have those 2 big paydays coming up for Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. So I do think wide receiver is a possibility as well. Yes. It's just to kind of hedge the future.
Absolutely, and with Joe Burrow, yes. And even when those 3 were on the field, they're one receiver injury away from you throwing out Trenton Irwin as much as they did this past season. And that's not conducive to, to winning the way that the Bengals want to win on offense with their passing game. Okay, so we're down to 3 more to go. The Saints are next. Saints finally get the pick because of the Sean Payton news that happened since our last show with him becoming the next head coach of the Denver Broncos. Yeah, let's just bring in more more talented coaching in the AFC. Stock the conference even more. Can somebody please go to the NFC? All right, you got the Saints, man.
I think this is where we said end of first round might be a little rich, but I think it's because of the position and because there's just no answer for this team. And this is not a team that likes to just wait till next year, right? They're not going to throw a season. They're going to go Anthony Richardson, quarterback from Florida, and let him sit behind Jameis for a year. I think it's a good situation. If Anthony Richardson does pan out, all right, you're going to go into 2024 with everything around him that he needs. Quality wide receivers, a good enough offensive line as long as Trevor Penning develops, and a really good defense. And I see the fit. I could see him in a Saints uniform, and if this dude hits his ceiling, it's a risk. And I know New Orleans wants to make draft picks to help themselves win that year, but at some point they got to figure out what their long-term plan is at this position. You got to stop thinking about Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston.
Yep, absolutely. And This would give them that boost that you do need, because even if Winston does come, I mean, even if Winston is a number one guy, they got to do something. They just have to. So yeah, they're going to add a young quarterback in the draft. They absolutely have to. The question is, where do they make that call? And this would be a perfect spot. That's an awesome pick. All right. Next up is the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are a team that, as we know, they're pretty stocked. They got a lot going for them. That's why they're in the Super Bowl again. This is a team, though, that could definitely go right back to wide receiver, because I think they've been okay with what they had. They made it out alive with what they have, but barely. So I still think it's a potential need, but the players that are on the board, when you're looking at guys like Zay Flowers or Hyatt, I think, matter of fact, we talked about this on one of our other shows. I think this is a team that would be a perfect fit, maybe in the third round. I don't know, the fourth round for Tank Dell. I think this would be a really tight. So I don't really know if I have to use up a wide receiver too early, because I think what they really should do talent-wise, because I don't know if the players left on the board are warranted over some of these other players. I think they need another guy to go alongside Chris Jones on the interior. So far, it's all Chris Jones. They added Karlaftis last year on the edge, so that's nice. They can go edge as well. I mean, you got Will McDonald, you got Ojulari. You have Benton inside. You got the kid from USC inside. So I'm going to actually, and you also look at maybe corner, but we've taken 5 corners so far. So I'm going to, not to say that, another one can't go, but I'm going to say that I'm going to take a defensive tackle here. I'm going to go with, one of those 3 kids. It's going to be Benton, the USC kid, or Cansey, or even Mozzie Smith. Who do you think fits best in this scheme?
Oh man, I think they favor size a little bit more. So I don't know if Tuipulotu is the ideal fit for what
Benton
they want
might
up
fit
there.
well with that. Defense.
I think Benton's the guy if they're going to go.
You know what's funny? And I just realized that. I remember hearing someone on the Senior Bowl broadcast say that somebody said that Benton reminded him of like a poor man's Chris Jones.
Okay, that makes sense. Long arms, physically dominant, and a guy that Chris Jones broke out in the NFL. You didn't see what he's doing right now in the NFL. You didn't see that at Mississippi State, but you saw the tools. They coached him up, developed him really well. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. I don't think it's all Chris Jones, and they used him correctly. And Benton, there are some similarities, skill set, tool set, to Chris Jones. I like it.
All right, last pick. You got the Eagles, and I had the Eagles with the first pick. We went with the offensive guard, Cyrus Torrance. So you've got the Eagles now, and as we said at that time, they can go in a variety of different ways based on what they end up doing with free agency. Let's remember that they voided a handful of contracts and I think out of the guys that they still have to consider with the cap situation, I think they have to re-sign Hargrave.
Yeah.
I think they could probably let Cox go. I think they could let Bradbury go. They can let Quinn go. They can let the guard go, which is what we talked about, why you would go guard maybe early. But I think they have to re-sign Hargrave.
Yeah, Hargrave's the guy that I think, he's younger, has a little bit more tread left on the tires, and I think he just offers more. I think there's a more versatile game. The Eagles just love to rotate these guys inside and out. When you have guys that can play multiple roles, it makes life a little bit easier. And Cox, I love him. He's been in the league a decade now. I just think that if they had to pick between the two of them financially, I agree that Hargrave's going to be the one that comes back. They're also they're in line to lose a lot of other defensive talent on this team, and they already used the pick on the offensive line, which I like what you did with Torrance.
T.J. Edwards is a free agent.
Yep.
Epps and Gardner Johnson are free agents.
Yep, and James Bradbury was such a valuable pickup for them after the Giants cut him. But if you think he's going to get a payday in the open market,
he ain't going to come back.
Can't afford him.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a kid that I've been really high on for a couple years now and shined every single time I watched him. He's a playmaker, and it's going to be a little bit pick out of left field, but it's going to be cornerback Riley Moss from Iowa. This is a player that I think has everything that the Eagles want at corner. He could be a week one, day one starter, and he's a playmaker. I think he's got 11 career interceptions, over 25 passes broken up. He can play nickel if you have other pieces that you want to move on to the outside. I even said that he could probably give a Julian Love type safety corner hybrid position. But no matter what, athletically he's there, intelligence-wise he's there, which Philly really values a lot, and he's a physical player too. So everything I think Philly wants at corner, and assuming Bradbury is going to be gone, Moss can fill in right away.
All right, sounds good. There you go. Our mock draft, first one for 2023, is in the books. We are going to it'll be interesting to see how much we change over each draft, especially when we're going to change who picks, because the next mock draft I'll pick first, and then we'll back and forth up until the last one, and we'll figure it out how we go from there. Because the next one, not sure when we had that scheduled for. I think it's definitely somewhere in March, though.
Yeah, I think we said after the combine.
That makes sense. Yeah. So we'll throw in another of these then, probably, because that'll give us an opportunity to have more than enough time on the pro days, and the Senior Bowl and East West is already in the books. We'll have the combine in the books. That'll be a perfect time right after that to do another mock, and then we'll have at least one or two more to go before the actual draft week is here. So Dave, appreciate it. You're going to go. You're going into the laboratory now for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be in a dark hole for the next few weeks, and just going to pump out all my final reports. I'm ready to go on them for most of them, not the defensive guys yet, but it's just the time-consuming part of writing all these reports up and then doing my team free agency reports, which is a really rapid-fire type thing. So I do as much prep work as I can right now to really kind of diagnose what teams did this past year and what they might need pre-free agency, and then adjust after free agency hits. So it's going to probably be the most intense month, but we'll definitely be in communication about when I can get back on for sure.
Yeah, I'll figure out a way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But yeah, just taking a look, that's pretty much, because once we come out of, because the combine starts on the 27th. So at some point, that third, fourth week of February, we'll be back doing something.
Hell yeah. Yep.
Not sure exactly what we're going to do, but we have a few other things that we're thinking about. So we still have more rankings and more team needs, but the team needs and stuff will come after free agency. So we still have a ways for that. But we have a bunch of programs still in the works that we're going to pop out here in the next few weeks once you come out of hiding. So
yes, sir. I'll see you on the other side.
Sounds good, Dave. And we'll look out for anything else on ourleds.com.
Yep. Thank you, bub.